Good morning, everyone. Um, I have a very challenging moment in the morning where we're kind of getting hungry, and I hope you got a coffee. I will make sure you're not falling asleep. I'm Joelle de Weerdt. Thank you for this nice presentation, Dan. And today I'll talk about, well, whales that I've been studying in Nicaragua and how it's actually linking to Monterey. But first of all, I just wanted to kind of introduce myself. Who am I? You could sense from my last name and my lovely accent that I'm not from here. So I'm from Belgium, and I put a little pinpoint there just in case you're like, where is Belgium? So it's a tiny country in Europe. So I crossed the Atlantic to be here today. Well, not specifically today, but to be in Monterey. So I obtained my master's degree in 2010. So that was a while ago at the University of Brussels. And then I kind of, does this era represent my journey kind of thing? So I've been volunteering in different countries. I went in Madagascar. I didn't point it, but just in case. Madagascar. I've been working on humpback whales in Mexico. I studied dolphins in Slovenia and in Great Britain. So after all this volunteering, I was like, that's great, but maybe I should start my own project. So I ended up in Nicaragua. So again, I put a little bit for you, just in case. So Nicaragua is located in Central America. So I created a project with my own nonprofit organization in 2015. And Association ELIS stands for Education, Liberty, Independence in Science. No worries, there's no knowledge test after this talk. So anyway, but the purpose of my project is to combine educational activities with scientific research and also, well, in the end, to get into conservation of humpback whales, right? That's the whole point of it. So it's science for a purpose. I ended up, like in 2020, to start a PhD, a self-funded PhD. So I searched for all my funding myself. And, well, of course, about humpback whales in Nicaragua. And I finished, yay, in October 2024. I became a doctor. Thank you so much. Thank you. And yeah, so I ended up here thanks to the Fulbright program, and I'm working at the UCSC. But I just wanted to kind of, I kind of introduced it, but in Nicaragua, I'm doing this research, and it's a pioneer project. So when I started in end of 2015, just to picture it a little bit, there was just no information about whales, dolphins, you know. John Calambokidis did some work with Cascadia Research Collective a while ago, but you know, there were like short surveys. There was not like long-term monitoring happening in Nicaragua. So that is kind of a big deal, right? It's a big thing. And working in Nicaragua is also very challenging. The logistics is very different, okay? So the idea for me is when I'm on the boat, I collect all the information I can that's humanly possible to collect. So I try to have like photographs, and I'm doing also acoustical research. I'm also collecting some genetic material, and with that, I hope to further my research and our knowledge in Nicaragua. Then I have education programs, so I've been giving environmental science classes to kids of the local communities because I do want to have an impact on the community and have community involvement, you know, to have a positive impact for humpback whales. So the education part is very, very important, and that's why I think you know, I'm very happy to be here because there's also a very important educational component. So this is something that's really crucial in my project. And I'm working also with fishermen. I'm giving information sessions to them about, you know, the presence of whales, the dolphins, and I talk about sustainable whale watching practices and, you know, raising awareness in general. And I'm very, very happy because end of last year, the mayor's office put like 2 huge statues of humpback whales because I've been bugging them about humpback whales for 8 years, literally. And then they were like, okay, Joelle, we will put, because there was, just background information, there was like a turtle statue, and I was like, I think it's unfair, there's no humpback whale statue. So after bugging them for such a long time, they actually did it. Yeah. Thank you. I'll send you a picture when I'm in San Juan with the whale. Unfortunately, I was not there at the inauguration because I was here, but I'll do that. And then there's this conservation part. So we're organizing beach cleanups. Currently, the program is still going on, even if I'm here. And we're doing these weekly beach cleanups. And that's great. I think so far we have removed 350 kilos of trash, which is like 700 pounds more or less from the beach, and I think that's amazing. So that's part of the conservation program, but I also work with the government and the national institutions in creating, regulations. And one that got published in March 2022 is the first ever regulation on whale watching practices in Nicaragua, and that was a science-based decision. So I was included in that, and that was also a very, big achievements for this project. So just wanted to give you this background before I dive into the humpback whale. So we're in California. I also put a pin just in case. So as I said, I'm at the UCSC. So I'll get you through the whole story of why I'm here, kind of what's the link between Belgium, Nicaragua, and California. But what I can tell you is that, well, the common factor is the humpback whale, right? This is kind of explaining all these different locations. So humpback whale has a size of more or less a bus. I wrote 15 meters, but I just understood that the whales here were on average 11 meters, so they're slightly smaller than a bus. The weight is 40 tons, so that's like a kind of a small Airbus, which is very big. You don't want that to breach on you. And they're migratory, so they're mammals, so they're warm-blooded. They are providing milk to the babies, and they have hair. Yes, they have hair. Yeah, I know. So in these structures, you have like little hair of 1 centimeter, so you literally have to be on top of it to see it, okay? Somebody in the lab actually at the UCSC showed me the hair, because it was like also hair, and because it came so close from their boat, and they got a picture, and he could zoom and we can see the hair. I should have had that picture here, but next time. And then they can, the gestation period is about 11 months. So they can potentially have babies every year, every 2 years. So, but let's zoom out. It's a lot of geography today. Huh? So the world map, so you have actually different populations all around the world. And you actually have 14 different populations. They're listed there on the left side. And the Endangered Species Act determines some conservation statuses based on photo identification and genetics. And we see that, well, the blue ones, the blue populations, they're not at risk. They're doing fine. But then you have a few populations, interestingly, like more or less around the equator, are red or yellow. So they're endangered or threatened. So here in California, you have different, so we call it DPSs for, different populations. And you have like different populations mixing. So a population usually is determined in function of where they're breeding and where the whales are born. That's how we identify populations. So they can be mixing in feeding areas easily. And here, well, here actually, not there, but we have, oh, that moved. We have the Mexican population and the Central American population. However, the Central America population it's not doing great. They're endangered. The conservation status is not great. Well, we know that the whale hunting stopped. Ted explained that really well, nicely yesterday. So most of the populations are recovering, and we're wondering why is the Central America population not doing well, So that was part of my my PhD. So in the early 2000s, like James showed, a Cascadia Research Collective did the Splash project, and they established that there were 500 to 700 individuals in Central America. So basically probably people that are walking outside, that's the size of the population. So that's not a lot. However, in 2021, we have more initiatives also in Central America because it's a big deal. In Central America, there's not a lot of information, at least in the 2000. Now there are other, research groups that are starting. We have more information, more photo ID. So we kind of said, okay, it's time to reevaluate the population size. And we're about 1,500 individuals. So we could say, yay, population is increasing. It's increasing 1.6%. So looking at it, oh, I feel sad, everything moved. Well, in Australia, the population in Australia is increasing more than 10%. And if you compare with Hawaii, we're about 6.5%. So that's interesting that in Central America, the annual increase is very low. Of course, the population is also smaller, so that might explain it also. Along the US West Coast, remember, there is this mixing of different populations. There are about 5,000 individuals. And there, the annual increase is 8%. So that's a bit better. So to evaluate threats, so understanding what is affecting the population dynamics, we need to generate knowledge on population dynamics, habitat use patterns, and migratory routes. Why? Well, this has been said several times, but there is a big issue with fishing gear entanglement, but also with vessel collisions. This is an image of what James was explaining, that sometimes boats are hitting whales, not even feeling or perceiving it, and they're just like, going off the boat and just sinking, and we're not aware of it. Or in some cases, some whales can survive. I don't know how long this guy survived with the spine. And then sometimes you can have just physical, you can visually infer that there was an interaction with a boat. So this being said, I was in San Juan del Sur, Nicaragua. San Juan del Sur is in the southwest coast of Nicaragua, and it's one of the most touristic places in Nicaragua. So that bay, so we would typically go from the harbor on the boat to go on survey. So what we're doing, we're collecting photo identifications. So as it was said, we're looking at the ventral part of the fluke. We're looking at the colorations, the shape, all these little, the edge. That helps a lot, especially with completely black tails or completely white tails. And we're building up a catalog. And that's like our fingerprints, or as Ted said, it's like our face. I could make a picture of all the faces here, and we can identify you based on your face morphology. So Nicaragua, so this guy should be there. Nicaragua is located more or less in the center of Central America, and Cascadia Research Collective did some data collection in the northern part of Nicaragua between 2004 and 2008. And I have been there too, between 2016 and 2008. So in my enthusiasm, I was like, I'm going to Nicaragua and I will collect data in 2 study sites. I still don't duplicate myself, so I had to have 2 teams at the same time going there. And I was also in the southern part of Nicaragua collecting data because, they have like activities that are developing more in the south than in the north, and I wanted to have like a control site where there is no impact and then the other one with impact, So I did that. However, after 2018, I didn't collect any more data in the northern part, so my secret dream is to go back in 2026, 10 years after, and have temporal information. So we built up these catalogs like you see on the right side. And I also have, I forgot to mention, a citizen science program. So the fishermen are actually also telling me when they're seeing whales. So they're we have this collaborative effort, and also when we're navigating, we see each other and say, oh, there is a whale. So they're really excited about it, and they're very, very helpful because the density of whales is absolutely not the same as in Monterey. Okay, so if you see 1 or 2 whales in a day, you're kind of happy. Okay, here it's like you can watch and you see so many whales. So the help of the fishermen is really crucial here. And of course, we collaborate also with Happy Whale. So all the data that's there, is very helpful for us, especially in assessing migratory connections. So my boat is not that smashed like this. It should be, but anyway. So this is like a little fisher boat. So you can see that it's fiberglass boat, and I have a little seat that came up last year. Otherwise, I was always sitting on my knees to make pictures. And we have this lovely roof where nobody is sitting under. So you see, it's super useful. No shadow for us, and it's pretty hot in Nicaragua. Yeah, so when you don't have whales and you're navigating 8 hours in the sun, it's kind of hard. But so that makes, it makes us so happy to see a whale. So we have been, so in my PhD, I've been collecting data, so from 2016 until now. But this is representing a few numbers from 2016 to 2021. We have been spending more than 2,000 hours navigating on that boat, which is almost 20,000 kilometers, and which represents 332 days, so almost a year of navigation on that boat, and representing like more than 200,000 pictures that we are manually looking at it, and then when we have a nice tail, we put it on Happy Whale. So, well, theoretically, we know that the feeding area should be here because, Cascadia Research Collective did some research on that. And we were expecting that whales are around between December and April. But really, at this point, I don't know. So I had like basic questions like, what are the population density in Nicaragua? Like, how many whales do we actually see? Which kind of groups do we see? Mother-calf pairs, competitive groups, which are typical for breeding areas? What is the population size? And what are their habitat use patterns? So we're collecting all this data. And we found that in the north and the south, well, we had whales in both sides. But in the south, we had almost 3 times more humpback whales in the north, which was already like a very interesting thing for me to see. And in terms of social groups, well, we had groups with calves, we had singers and competitive groups, so that's great. That's indicating that they're breeding. But what was also interesting, I had more groups with calves in the northern part of Nicaragua compared to the southern part of Nicaragua. So it was like, maybe northern part is a calving ground, right? Calving and nursing ground. So this is like, in a nutshell, my results of my PhD. I have a little bit more of graphs and stuff, so less images, but I hope you don't mind. So I did like also a population abundance estimate. So basically it's knowing how many whales are visiting Nicaragua. It's not the whole population. I told you it's about 1,500, but I wanted to know how many are seen in Nicaragua. And that was about 109 to 517 individuals. So it's a rather small population, which is normal. The overall population is pretty small, but it could also indicate that we have a high site fidelity. What does it mean? That the whales are always coming to the same area over and over again and potentially sticking around for a longer time. So that was also very interesting to see. Oh, so I'm kind of going fast. So I have seen in the southern part of Nicaragua some feeding behaviors. So you know that whales are migrating, so they're feeding here, feeding, fat enough. I'm going to the breeding grounds and fasting. But interestingly, in Nicaragua, I saw some feeding behaviors, which was kind of weird. And some people say, how do you know they're feeding? Well, we captured this. Mouth open. We don't see the fish, but the fish is there. It's little sardines, not krill. And so this whale was feeding. I remembered I said, this is a publication. Yeah, so this got actually published. So we saw these whales feeding. So for instance, we have the mouth open, and here you actually see the sardine. Here also you see the sardine. This is whale 67. I'm just mentioning so you remember for after. Here the mouth open. Then you have also poo. That indicates that they're actually also feeding. And then they were associating with marine birds, but also with dolphins. That's interesting. I don't know why it's doing that, but okay. So we see only in southern Nicaragua we have seen those feeding behaviors. So in the north, no feeding, nothing. And that represented 17% of our observations, which is quite a lot. It's not just a one-time thing. They were doing it more often. And we have seen that throughout February, March, and April. Also very interesting, because they're not supposed to do that in Nicaragua. So just to make sure like you're with me, so we have a rather small population in the north. It's probably mother calves like resting, traveling, and they're using shallower waters and warmer surface waters. And in the south, well, we had more adults, not a lot of mother calf pairs, and well, they're using deeper and colder surface waters. And also, what was interesting is that between both sides, I only recaptured 2 whales that were the same. And this is not far, it's like 250 kilometers apart. So you would say, I mean, what I see there, I would see them, also in the north. Just to go back, so I was interested in understanding their migratory destinations. And my question was, are the guys from the north having like another migratory pattern compared to the guys from the south? Okay, that's the main question. So if we look back in migratory, destination research, back, our dear John did a great work, and he assessed the migratory destination from Costa Rica, which is the country south of Nicaragua. And they were seen off the US West Coast, so in California. Then he did another study a few years later, and you can still see that, well, Costa Rica, well, most of the whales were seen in California and perhaps up to Washington, Oregon. That's it, what we know about migratory destinations from whales in Central America. So that was the reason why I focused on that. So my questions were, okay, where are they going? Are the Nicaraguan whales also going to California? What is their timing? When are they actually arriving here or leaving here? And then the same question in the breeding grounds. And then, is there like an affinity? Are the whales from the north and the south kind of have a preferred area along the route? Okay, but of course, to answer this question, I emailed Ted and was like, Ted, please help me. I need to answer this question. I cannot sleep at night. I need to answer this question. So Happy Whale, well, Ted, of course, I asked the permit to all the people that contributed, citizen scientists and researchers. And I am very, very fortunate that everyone was like, sure, Joelle, we think it's a great idea. Here is our data. Lovely. So the answer to this question is that, well, so the red is always the north of Nicaragua, and the blue is always the south. I kind of try to make it easy. You see that there was a connection, so the thickness of this line shows that there are more individuals that were seen in the area where they're supposed to be connected. So in the northern of Nicaragua, we saw that they were in central and southern California mainly, and some of them were seen up to British Columbia. For the whales seen in the south, we have like similar pattern, but some were also seen in Washington. However, you see that the line is thicker in Central California, Southern California. Interesting. This equal recapture, that means like they were equally seen in the north and the south. I couldn't really assign them to a site, but either way, it was also seen off California. And if I summarize all of these 3 maps, you have this guy showing the same thing, that California is kind of the place to be for the whales from Nicaragua. So I've said that already. So then I wanted to plot. Are you still okay? You need the coffee or you're good? Okay. So we have the number of photographic recaptures here. So I just like added up all the photographic recaptures of all the animals. And then I plotted it per month to kind of see, okay, from the perspective from Nicaragua, I'm not talking about other Central American countries, just my whales, if I can just say my whales for a second. So the whales in Nicaragua were seen in their feeding area. So, you know, it goes from British Columbia to California, but let's say California was the main place. From January to December, you know, some were kind of sticking around or maybe doing a shorter migration. You know, they were going back and forth very quickly. And then you kind of see, okay, April, they're coming back. May, June, and the peak is here in September. So well, that's what we would expect, right? They're feeding mainly in these months from July to October. And then you see this nice decrease. So they're seeing less, so probably starting their migration south to the breeding area. So now if you see the breeding area story, well, you can see that we have much less information, right? Like the picture is under the 150. And here I split Nicaragua in white. And the other is if they were seen anywhere else in Central America or in Mexico. And you can see that here on the bottom, that was mainly Mexico, where they were seen starting in October, which kind of fits, you know, they're leaving and here they're arriving, it makes sense. And then if we're looking here in January, February, March, well, they're mainly here, and then it's decreasing again, which kind of correspond also with what is happening in the. So that's pretty cool. You know, it's the graphs are reversed. I have been doing some effort in April, and that's interesting because that's kind of on the late end of the breeding season to be there in April. Then I made a map with all these recaptures. There are very weird things in my presentation. There's a lot of things not supposed to be there. But if you see here, you know, the map is dynamic, so it's moving around. So please ignore this thing. It's not supposed to be there. And you see all the recaptures. So the darker it is, like the bluer, you have more recaptures. And you can see, I will do it again, play it again. So look at how spatially the recaptures are spread out. Yeah. Can I manually do this? Is there something happening? Yeah. So February, you see they're in Central America. April, a lot are already in the feeding areas. And then May, June, July, they're feeding. August, September, October, starting to go down. November, December, and they're doing their thing in the other area. So that was pretty cool. And then you see an arrow that's supposed to be there with Costa Rica dome. So the Costa Rica dome is a nutrient-rich feature. Okay, it's kind of weird because it's moving. It's spatially and temporally dynamic. So you see that the Costa Rica dome is in an offshore position. And I'll show you again. So now you will not focus on the little dots, but you will focus on the circle. And you will see how it moves. So nutrient-rich areas, it's great. It means there's a lot of food there for the animals. You have, so I'll try to make this work again. Okay, there you go. Look at the dome. And then it's sticking to the coast in February, March, April, and then going back offshore in May. This is a very, very special feature because I put a circle, but of course some years it's bigger, can be smaller. It's very, very dynamic. Okay. So just keep that in mind for later. And here I have this, I have you with me still, huh? So the northern Nicaragua, red, southern Nicaragua, blue. What is this representing? I wanted to see if the whales, the humpback whales in Nicaragua had a preferred side where they would stick around along the route, right? So this is kind of translated there, so probably your brain will prefer this one. So you have southern Nicaragua, and they're actually more seen in mainland Mexico. So this is the group where the whale grouping the whales based on their photographic recaptures. And you see that they are more often seen in Central and Southern California. And then if you look at the red guys, Northern Nicaragua, you see that they have been seen more often in Baja California and more in the northern part of California. So there is like a tendency where actually indeed they have site fidelity, you know, they go to Nicaragua, but they still prefer some other areas, and I kind of skipped, sorry. They also like El Salvador and Guatemala. So that's interesting. I would like to do this also on a Central America level, like, you know, including all the countries to kind of have a better picture of this site affinity. And then for those who were wondering about the blue guys, so that's Costa Rica. That I didn't find any match with the feeding areas. What does it mean? So probably I took the picture of a whale, and it was a whale that was just traveling to Costa Rica and kind of stayed in Costa Rica, so not really sticking around, not a real Nicaraguan one. And then we have Panama. So the same story for Panama probably was one traveling through Nicaragua and was seen with Oregon. And then we have southern Mexico, because recently we have added southern Mexico. We have found through all our research that southern Mexico was actually also Central America. I mean, not geographically, but for the whales, it's kind of Central America. They're extending to southern Mexico. And then we see that they were seen more up north. And it's interesting also here, you kind of see a pattern where the northern they are, the northern they go. You know, there is a kind of a structure, minus Panama is not following it, you see. So there is like a spatial structuring. So that was very interesting to me. I am currently still, I also investigated how the Costa Rica dome was affecting the whales. And actually the Costa Rica dome is the feature that is, you know, bringing all these nutrient-rich waters. And so the whales are like, there is food, why would I not eat, right? Because when I talk to the general public, they're like, well, Joelle, what a discovery. There is food, the whales are feeding, like, you know, what's the deal? But the reality is that whales are supposed to be fasting. That's what we are thinking in the scientific community. So the fact that they are feeding while they should be fasting is kind of interesting, because we're like, probably humpback whales are more flexible and, you know, are taking advantage if they have food, right? It would be, you're not hungry, you walk in the wharf and you see a restaurant, you're like, why not eating a crepes with Nutella? So, you know, I guess they're doing the same thing. So in my last chapter of my PhD, I've been looking at how whales are responding to the productivity, and what I actually didn't show here today because I was not sure I would have the time. I also discovered there was another humpback whale population coming to Nicaragua. Those whales are feeding off Antarctica. So they're coming, but at a different time of the year. And that brings a lot of very interesting perspectives, because you're in the same area, but with two humpback whale populations doing different things. So you're like, okay, what is different that, you know, because the southern ones are not feeding in Nicaragua, but the Costa Rica dome is in the offshore position. So in the coastal areas, they will not feed. It's not clear for me if they're following the dome offshore and eating there, I don't know. We will know that in the future. In a few years, I'll come back and tell you. So I've been looking at how the whales were responding from the north and the south to the dome, so all these nutrients, and I did find some interesting response from the Nicaraguan whales. And I just want to finish with some yeah, so I looked up on happy whale. So I have a whale that's called Donatello. He is from the southern Nicaragua. You remember the blue. And I've seen him feeding. Okay, he's one of the feeders. So it was first sighted in 2014 and was sighted in Nicaragua in 2025. So I added some maps, you know, so to show you the specific link with Monterey Bay. And it was actually first seen by Kate Spencer in Moss Landing. That was the very first sighting was here, you know. And I think that's very fascinating, because Donatello is one of my favorite whales. And then we have the 67. You remember I talked about it? He was feeding in 2018. And look at this. Like, he really likes the area. And that makes me wonder, that's a picture of this year, and it was feeding. And I'm like, why would this guy be feeding? Because obviously he's around and doing his job of feeding a lot. So that raises a lot of questions, like why would they feed extra in Nicaragua? Are they not having enough feeding opportunities here? Or do they invest in a strategy to stay longer in breeding areas so they have more reproductive possibilities? You know, there's a lot of questions. I don't have the answer to that. And then I have also Gollum. That's like my super top 3 favorite whale. I saw, it was first sighted in 1988, so that's a pretty old whale. And we have seen him this year. You see, in Monterey, he likes it too. I say he because I know it's a male. And I was digging into my database, and so this picture was taken in Nicaragua, and you can see that this feature was not present. And I was looking on Happy Whale and looking, okay, what was the next picture of this guy? So that was okay, sorry, that was March 2022 in Nicaragua, and I found one recapture, the earliest, was in June 2021. So then I was like looking at, okay, well, if I look at those reports of whale entanglements, you see that, well, most of the entanglements are between June and, you know, December. The purple is a humpback. So I'm like, probably I mean, it's just like speculations. I don't know. Okay, I cannot point at anybody at this point. But I'm like, that was an interesting, you know, an interesting fact that perhaps it got entangled here somewhere, at least on the way between Nicaragua and here. But just wanted to provide you this information. Like, it's just a picture, but it gave us some insights that unfortunately Gollum got entangled and fortunately survived. So this is not supposed to be like that neither. But my further questions for the postdoc, and that's what is actually bringing me here, because I have this feeding in a breeding area, and I know about breeding, I don't know about feeding. So I'm wondering, how frequently are whales actually feeding in Nicaragua? How important is it for them? And is that influencing also their migratory timing, their decision to stay longer in Nicaragua or leave earlier? So I'm using photo ID, looking how on temporal site fidelity. So I still have time, right? So for example, here I've been plotting all the years where I've seen the whales, and very interestingly, I had more photographic recapture, so the tails, more in March and April. But then you see there is a variability between the years. So I'm trying to figure out, this is like a preliminary result, but I think it's interesting that in March and April, I have more recaptures. The whales are sticking around in March, April, which is like on the late side. And then I've done like an analysis to see, okay, a social structure, because whales do not have a social structure. That's what we think. You know, they're not fasting and they're not having a social structure. So I've seen that I found a social structure between my whales, okay. And I circled around. It's the same thing I showed you earlier, like how can we cluster and group all these animals. All those that have a circle were seen feeding. So the feeding might induce some social structure. What does it mean? That a whale might prefer being with another whale to say, hey, let's go and eat in Nicaragua. And I see them together. So you see that these guys were mostly seen in March and April, what I showed you earlier. So there is like something interesting there. And where I want to get at is to say, I think I have a few animals, not all the population, that are feeding in addition to the breeding. Okay, they're not giving up breeding. They breed plus feeding, optional. So that was kind of fascinating to me, and I really want to dig into that. Like they said, well, videogrammetry would be great to see what's the health benefit of this supplemental feeding in Nicaragua. And this is where Santa Cruz is coming. Yeah. I want to use these tags to be able to see how frequently they are doing. And I am done. So I won't go any further, with Ari. And the whole goal, of course, of having all this information is to say, okay, if the whales are sticking around, have a high site fidelity, you know, they can be more prone to fishing nets locally in Nicaragua or to vessel collisions, you know, if they like that area. So it's really important and crucial I understand all of that for to inform the authorities, and I would like to work on a national disentanglement network also as a second follow-up step. So those are all the things. And okay, thank you so much. Thank you. So there's still some time for a question. I just want to say that there is an event organized by my lab, Ills for Whales, in Santa Cruz on the 26th. I have some flyers if you're interested to continue our talk, and you can follow my project on the social media if you want. And I have lovely silver rings if you want to support my research. Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Yes? Mm-hmm. Calves? Okay, so when a whale is feeding, do I see any calves? Well, that's an interesting part of it. I haven't seen any females feeding so far. I mean, I need genetics to confirm, but I know some of the whales, I've heard them singing and involved as escort, and so I kind of suspect they are males. But most of them are males. I haven't seen any calves around or doing it. In 2003, I've seen in the literature they have seen a mother with a calf actually feeding, but I've never observed that. That's why also having those tags, because then I can end a biopsy, I would know it's a male or a female, and then and I can actually provide an appropriate answer. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the dome is actually not affecting that much the northern part of Nicaragua, and that acts just as a breeding calving area, and the south would be like a double function kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, I think it's super cool. Yes? Yeah, that's. Yeah, so the blue is the Costa Rica. That means that the whales were mainly seen in Costa Rica, and I suspect that it's because it was just like traveling through Nicaragua. Costa Rica is south, so I kind of captured the tail, and it went. It was not really interested to hang around in Nicaragua and just went to Costa Rica. But as I said, to answer that question, I would need the Central America database, and then doing this same analysis and see what are the, if that spatial structure is confirmed, that you have Costa Rica migratory route and Nicaragua different migratory routes and preferences. Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.